Specific time to start. And so we're starting it here at 11:30, right? Everything good? Everything good? No? You're not hearing anything? Did you make sure the stuff at the bottom is in there? Now, do you hear everything? Did you push go? Then why have I got an echo? There's an echo. Well, I don't know why there's an echo, but there's an echo. It's always something. I tell you what, my battlefield is technology and the internet. That's where I take my deepest. Can you hear? Okay. What'd you do? You shut that off. Oh, okay. All right. Sorry about that if you're listening. And technical difficulties always happen around here. And but anyway, let's go to Proverbs 26 verses 17 through 18. Proverbs 26 verse 17 through 18. We had a other issue this week as well as our little gateway went completely down. It's defunct, and so now we have to get a new one. And so the people told me how to do it to where I didn't have to spend hundreds of dollars in order to do it. So we won't have that back probably till next month. But we will get her done for the least amount so that we can do. So Proverbs 26 verses 17 through 18. Again, we've been going through, not 17 through 28 is what we're going to look at, verses 17 to 20. I know it's a lot of verses, but it has a very unique topic. So we've talked about the fool. We've talked about the sluggard. Today we're going to talk about the busybody. That's an interesting one. The busybody. How exciting that is, right? And but the Bible has a lot to say about a busybody, and not good things, by the way, about the busybody. And then I'm going to end the study with a phrase that I heard a preacher say at a conference I was at, and which was, I won't say it quite like he said it because he had a very unique culture, and it came out really great. It won't come out as great when I do it. So, but it's still a good phrase. But let's start in reading verse 17. He that passes by and meddleth with strife belonging not to him is like one that taketh a dog by the ears. Okay? And so he that passeth by and meddleth with strife belonging not to him. Boy, there is a grand thought there. And that is that there's strife out there that just doesn't belong to you, and you ought not meddle with it. You know? And it's like grabbing a dog by the ears. Now, not think of I'm petting my dog, but it's like grabbing the dog by the ear to keep it from getting to you. You're holding it back by the ears. And so you've got a problem. You've got a hold of this angry dog, okay, by the ears, which is not a good place to hold a dog in first place. But letting it go is just going to be just as bad. And that's the kind of paradoxical situation that the scriptures are bringing up here. That if I come by and I find strife that has nothing to do with me, okay, and then I decide to get involved in that strife, okay, it's just as dangerous to you, even though it's not your strife. And that's kind of what God is saying here. It's not your strife. Leave it alone. Okay? Well, I want to help. I think I can bring about peace. It's not your strife. Leave it alone. And I know we're all guilty of it. You know, sometimes we'll come by and we'll see something going on, an argument or something, and we'll want to put our 2 cents worth in there, as they say. We think we can, but really, how often has that ever turned out to the good? It usually doesn't, because it's not your strife. Okay? And so this is what he's trying to say there. Verses 18 and 19. As a madman who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man that deceiveth his neighbor and saith, am not I in sport? And so what this is a reckless attitude toward strife. So a man that casts firebrands, arrows, and death, He that deceiveth his neighbor and saith, I'm not in sport. He's careless. He's reckless. Whatever. It was just a joke. It was just a joke. Well, he didn't think it was funny. I remember one person saying, it ain't a joke if they ain't laughing. It's not. Okay? And at the end of the day, you may think it's funny, and that's fine, but you're casting firebrands, arrows, and even death. Okay? So your humor is targeted at someone else. Okay? And these are not positive things. Firebrands, arrows, death. Okay? And so you're really insulting someone. You're really abusing someone. Okay? And then when someone complains, you go, it's just a joke. I was just joking. Okay? I was just joking. Like my little Scottish accent there. I was just joking. Yeah, but you're stirring up strife. Okay? You're meddling in things you ought not meddle in. Verse 20 through 21. Where no wood is, the fire goeth out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife ceaseth. It stops. As coals are to burning coals, and fire and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. So look what God is saying here. He's coming through and saying, well, if there's no wood, then there's no fire. Okay? So that's not the same as that expression, where there's smoke, there's fire. No, he's saying where there is no wood, there's no fire. In other words, if fire doesn't have a fuel to consume, then it's not going to be there. I mean, one of the simple ideas of fire is it has to have a fuel to consume. It has oxygen, right? But it also has a fuel. And if you take the fuel away, there's nothing there. So likewise, if you take the talebearer away, strife cease. Now, talebearer is just an old English word that basically means a busybody. Okay? Someone who bears a tale. And Christians are good about this because we've got our own way of gossiping without trying to make it sound like gossip. We attach something either before or after like this. Y'all need to pray for them. And now everything that comes after this is gossip. But it doesn't seem like gossip anymore because it's a prayer request now. Or we forget to do it in the front and we get done and then we go, so we just need to pray for them. Okay, that's just gossip. That's all it is. But we found a way to get around it because we turned it into a prayer request. And that's one of the reasons why prayer meetings have to be very carefully run. Because prayer meetings can turn into gossip sessions very, very easily under those methods that I just described. Yeah. So we have to be very careful about prayer meetings. And I think as we're studying on Wednesday nights even, that we're learning that prayer meetings need to be structured. And that's just the reason why. Of all the reasons, other than that the Lord just gave us that example, but one of the big reasons why is because of gossip. Because we can turn into talebearers very, very easy. And so we have to be very careful. We can say, pray for Linda, even though we know a lot of stuff about Linda, without ever telling everybody else what we know. And we can go to the Lord in prayer for Linda. I don't know who Linda is. I'm just throwing it out there. And and we can go to the Lord in prayer, and the Lord knows. I don't have to know. All I have to do is bring Linda before the Lord in prayer. Okay? The Lord knows what's going on. Now, if I'm alone, it's just me and God, okay? Because here's a good definition of gossip. It's not the dictionary definition necessarily, but it's a good definition of gossip. Two people talking about something neither one of them can do anything about. Right? The great thing when I go to God in prayer is not two people talking about something neither one of them can do anything about, because you know what? God can do something about it. But when I talk to another human being about something neither one of us can do anything about, I'm not the boss. I can't cut a check. You know what I'm saying? I can't go pick them up. It's not something I can physically do, okay, in order to fix this problem or minister to this particular need, okay? It's just somebody telling me something about somebody else that really has nothing to do with me, okay? This is gossip. And just sandwiching it between the expressions, y'all pray for them, doesn't change it from being what it is, although I now have two people to pray for. the person that I was asked to pray for and the person that just spilled all that gossip. So we have to be, but a tale bearer, it's just an old English word, is someone who bears a tale. He's running around telling, or she's running around telling tales. Okay, and we love stories, right? We love to hear things. So I don't know if that's true, Pastor. Really, because social media sure is a big thing, and most of it is just tale bearing, right? And sometimes I understand. Sometimes people are telling on themselves. They're not necessarily telling on somebody else. But my fear is it develops an appetite to look into somebody else's business that really you have nothing. I feel sorry for these like big families that have allowed television cameras to come into their world. To me, it's like this just builds up an appetite in everybody else to poke your nose in somebody else's business. Okay, they say it's reality TV, but actually it's very well edited. It's not really these people's lives. They take specific events, they film them, and then they heavily edit them so that you can have an entertaining moment. But the whole point is we're developing an appetite of poking our nose in somebody else's business. And I feel sorry. And I told my wife, I said, I feel sorry for those families that's going to come back and get them one day. You don't want to bring the camera lens into your home. You say, how do you know that, Pastor? Because the Queen of England did it. Okay? The Queen thought this would be a great idea. Let's show the world what the royal family's like. That was not smart. Because it happened at a time when Great Britain was suffering economically, but yet the royal family was doing very well. So in come those cameras, and while everybody else is eating beans on toast, they're taking ski trips to the Alps. You know what I'm saying? They did not build up favor in their eyes. Okay? And this is why eventually when someone like Diana, who was not a commoner, by the way, marries but had the perception of being one, but she wasn't. She's a Spencer. Her brother's an Earl. And but then there are all the people's princess. Why? Because she took her kids she acted like a normal person acted with her kids. Okay? Not like the royal family did, which everybody knew because they'd seen all the shows. Because Elizabeth was badly advised, to let the cameras in. It didn't work out well for them. Okay? And it isn't going to work out for anybody else either. Well, I think this is a great way to witness. Let everybody come in. No, stop building up the appetite for people and getting involved in everybody else's business. Okay? There are certain things that just ought not be spoken about by two people who aren't related to each other. Okay? And there's just some things that just ought to say, well, you're trying to hide something. I'm trying to be respectful. Okay? And realize their doors are made for a reason. Okay? Somebody's on the outside, somebody's on the inside, and let the door be there. And when it comes to your family, okay, non-family members don't necessarily need to be involved. Okay? I know the doctor's not your family member. I understand certain things. But the whole cotton picking wide world don't need to be in on it. Okay? And I know as a preacher, as a pastor, a lot of people divulge things to me to pray for and help them and advise them, and that's fine too. But at the same time, the whole wide world doesn't need to know this is going on. Because I think it develops an appetite that desensitizes us to the idea that we're getting information that doesn't belong to us. We don't need to know it. So when someone comes along and gossips to us, guess what happens? It's just the same thing as watching a reality TV show now. We're so desensitized to it. Okay? But look at the damage that is happening. Look at how it's escalating. They have AI programs now where teenagers are taking photos of other teenagers, doctoring them with these AI programs, right? And then publishing them on social media, destroying the reputations and lives of the innocent one. Okay? And you say, well, there's an appetite for it. This is what I'm trying to say. Because we've got this appetite, this is what happens. We have to feed it. So be very careful. Because where there is no wood, the fire goeth out. So where there's no tailbur, the strife ceases. As coals are as coals are to burning coals, and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. Yeah, I would really, sometimes these influencers, they call them now. But the Pope just canonized a 15-year-old boy to be a saint who was an influencer. I haven't looked deeper into what he was trying to influence people too, but he just got canonized, and it was because he's an influencer. So now he's saint, whatever he is. I guess you pray to him to help you with your influencing. Is that what he was doing? He was a teenager who had some kind of social media platform that he was bringing people into Catholicism. Is that what it was? Okay. I kind of figured that. I just didn't have time to finish reading the story, but I thought, oh, did he now? Okay. 2 people. Oh, wow. All right then. Okay, sure. All right then. All right. But at the end of the day, I'm just saying, look at the way culture is going. It doesn't have to be, social media doesn't have to be a big gossip pit, but human nature is to gossip. Okay. And people will gossip. And unfortunately, on these social media platforms, I know they say they got people who verify and check, but that's only on big issues. Little lies that people tell about everybody else, in their group, and nobody's fact checking that. And the lies are out there, and they won't be taken back. And now that person has to fight with that lie for the rest of their lives. And that's sad. But why do you got it? Because you got to get talebearer. You got somebody who enjoys telling tales, spinning tales about people. And that's why the strife, that's why the anxiety, that's why everything happens. Verse 22, the words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. Even if it isn't true, it still hurts. Even if it isn't true, the very fact that someone spread that lie about you, and it's going far away. I remember D.L. Moody tells a story of a woman who gossiped about him. Even if you know the story, don't stop me. And she finally got right with the Lord and came and apologized to Mr. Moody for her gossiping about him and asked if there was anything she could do to make up for it. So Mr. Moody, as the story is told, goes onto the top of a building with a pillow. And those are the days when pillows were stuffed with feathers, He ripped open the pillow and shook it out into the wind. And he said, if you can collect all the feathers, then you can undo the gossip that you just did. And everyone knows there's no chance she's ever going to collect all them feathers being blown into the wind. And so likewise, but he was trying to illustrate to this woman the power of gossip. It was a lie she told. But it's heard all over the place. It's picked up and transmitted. It's like that game I told you about called I've Got a Secret. And it gets distorted the further it goes. The further from the source, the more distorted it becomes. Human history has illustrated that. We all know that this common error started with Noah. Okay? Noah and the ark landed on top of the mountains of Ararat, and him and his children dispersed from the mountains of Ararat across the world. Now, there's no doubt to me, even though Noah, I understand he did what Noah did, but he was still a preacher of righteousness. He was still the source of the knowledge of God. But look what man did the further they got away from Noah. I'm not even talking about after Noah died. I'm just during the dispersion from that point. You have the Tower of Babel. Now, if you do a timeline and you do crossovers, you'll find Noah lived quite a while after and he was there, and God extended his life, I believe, to keep the message going forward. Okay? But look what happens very shortly after Noah. You have the Tower of Babel. What happened? Did they not realize? Did they not still know the story? Yes, but the further away you get from the source of the truth, the more distorted the understanding of the truth is. This is why missionaries have found that they can go into pagan cultures and always find an element of the gospel in there. You say, well, how is that? Because their ancestors got off the same boat as everybody else. It's just that over the millennia, the truth has got distorted. Because the further you get away from the truth, the more distorted the truth becomes. So there's always an element in there This is why every culture believes in a supreme being that they're accountable to. Well, where do they get that information from? Noah. Isn't it amazing how that every culture you go into the world, there's a flood story? Now, it doesn't run exactly as the one we have in our scripture, but it's the idea of a guy building a boat because of a great flood, right? But then it's muddled. Why is it muddled? Because the further you get away from the truth, the more distorted the truth becomes. And that's exactly what you got. That explains mankind to a T. We all got off the same boat, but the further we got away from the boat, the more distorted the truth become because we got further and further away from the truth. Okay? But that's true for our own Christian lives. The further you get away from the truth, okay, the more distorted the truth will become, which is why we need to go back to the truth daily. Back to the truth daily. Okay? Because the further we get away from the truth, the longer we stay away from the truth, the more distorted the truth will become in our minds. Do you know what? Because you don't live in a vacuum. You have an enemy, an adversary, known as the devil. And what is he known as? The father of lies. So what is the devil constantly doing? Lying. And what is his best way of lying? Distorting. Just like back in Genesis chapter 3. Let's distort the truth and then completely deny the truth. And that's what he does. But the further away from the truth you get, the easier it is for him to distort it because you're already believing and living on a distorted truth anyway. This is why it's so important to get back to the source material and always read the source material. Because, sometimes even in your own zeal and innocence, you can pervert the truth. Because you can get to thinking about something, right, that you read in scriptures, and you can go start making logic trees that if this, then that, this, that. But the problem is you're getting further and further away from the source. I'm not saying you're necessarily wrong, but the point is you're this, that, and even my this, that, then isn't the source material. It is my assumptions from the source material. And I may be right, but I could also be wrong. Do you know what you got to do then? You got to go back to the source material. Start from the beginning again. And this is what the devil loves to do. He loves to pull us away from the source material. He's pulled Christianity away from the source material. Most people are Christians based on tradition, not truth. Mama was a Christian. Daddy was a Christian. Grandma and grandpa were Christians. Great-grandma and grandpa were Christians. You know what I'm saying? And we've just always been, my family, we've also always been Christians. What does that mean? In England, I found people like that all the time. Well, I'm English, so of course I'm a Christian. I'm sorry, what? But that's in their mind. Because Britain is a Christian nation. I'm like, well, you need to read the headlines, boy. It ain't no Christian nation. But this is the mindset. But what is their source that they look at and go, this is what makes me a Christian? Is it the scripture? No, it's tradition. And a lot of Christianity is just tradition. We just keep doing what they did before us without asking, why did they do that? I'm not saying everything traditional is wrong, okay? But the point is, this is why there's a lot of, what do they call it? Deconstructionism. That's the word they're using nowadays. Is because kids are raised on tradition, not upon truth. And when they grow up, they begin to question the traditions. The traditions, some of them have been created through logic trees. Okay? In that day and that time that practice was instituted, it made sense based upon that truth. That this is how we implement that truth in our day and time. The problem is the day and time moves. So this doesn't make any sense anymore. But people still fight for this. They don't fight for the truth. They fight for this. Because this is how they implemented the truth into their day and time. And this protected them from the lies and the falsehoods. But the context has changed. The truth hasn't changed. The context has changed. But we're fighting down here. And kids are going, well, if that's Christianity, that doesn't make sense in this world. So Christianity must be false. Well, the truth is not false. The truth has never been false. Okay? Tradition may be unapplicable in our day and time because maybe the whole system in which that tradition was created is no longer there. But what we need to do is go back to the truth. Stop fighting for the tradition and go back to the truth. The important thing isn't the tradition, although, again, nothing wrong with it. If it actually does help you live out that truth, wonderful. Okay? But it is a tradition. It's not worth fighting for. What's worth fighting for is the truth. Okay? So we have to be careful when it comes to that. Because obviously when we get down into defending tradition, when we get down into defending things like that, then we end up having these situations like we're talking about here. Talebearers with wounds, and they go down to the innermost parts of the belly. Because it's this area. Truth is hard for the devil to fight. It really is. Truth is hard for the devil to fight. So how do you know? Because when he went after Jesus, what did Jesus do for him in the 40 days and 40 night temptation? He just quoted truth to him, didn't he? Could the devil fight the truth? No, he changed the subject, didn't he? You know why? Because he couldn't go past the word of God. He knew he couldn't. And Jesus, who not only is our Savior, is the best example, taught us very clearly that if you're going to fight the devil, don't fight him with tradition. Fight him with the truth. Because regardless of tradition, again, does that mean everything that we do as a matter of tradition is wrong? No, absolutely not. But I think sometimes we turn tradition into an idol. And it becomes the thing we worship versus the truth. Let's go on. Verse 23. Burning lips and a wicked heart are like potsherds covered with silver dross. So burning lips, and again, it's talking about someone whose lips just can't keep their stinking from flapping, and they've got a wicked heart. Well, it's just like potsherd covered with silver dross. Okay? Silver dross, first of all, dross is not something that's valuable. It may look pretty, but it's not valuable. The dross is what you're trying to get out of silver when you refine it. Okay? So we're talking about silver dross. Okay? We're talking about the impurities. So it's impurities over potsherds, making it that much worse. So burning lips and a wicked heart, they're like potsherds covered with silver dross. Verse 24, he that hateth dissembleth with his lips and layeth up deceit within himself. So he hated, he dissembleth with his lips. So he hates. So we have to understand there. But then again, we're talking about a situation here of a busybody, a talebearer, as some have written, a spice peddler. Because obviously people who peddle spice, peddle it so you can season up whatever it is you're about to eat. For instance, I got a roast on at the house. And when I took that roast and I put it in my crock pot, I reached over to my Dizzy Lizzie's, what we call it at the house. We don't call it a Lazy Susan. And my Dizzy, and then I opened it up and I took out all these wonderful spices that good friends of mine bought me from Trader Joe's. And I'm sitting there with my white pepper, and I'm sitting there with my different salts and my oils and stuff that I buy, and I'm seasoning up this piece of meat, right? And then I throw in all my veg, my potatoes and my carrots and various things in there, and then I put in a little broth in there. I like to let it cook in a little broth, and so I got a broth, all my crock pot sitting there. What I'm doing, I'm seasoning it up with spices to make it taste better, okay? To make it more interesting when I eat it, okay? So that when I eat it, it's like, this really tastes good. Well, actually, it's the spice combinations that taste good. It's not necessarily food anymore. But that's why we have spices, to make things taste better, right? And so, likewise, a spice peddler is a name they used to put on talebearers or gossips, because they never just tell it like it is. We gotta put a little jam on the bread, as the hillbilly says. We gotta make it, embellish it just slightly. So, because no one ever gossips just straight telling it, right? Even when you go to the newspaper, you don't get the straight story, or a news feed. Someone's always got to put their spice into it. I mean, I don't know. I didn't really live in the days so much where he was so popular, like a Walter Cronkite, who Those from that generation that depended upon him to tell them the news said he was unbiased and honest when he read the news. You know, even though everybody knew his particular political persuasions, they said he read the news unbiasedly. Well, I don't know. I have no idea because I wasn't living in his day when he read those things. But most human beings don't accomplish that. Most human beings have to throw their, even if they're just reading straight, the voice inflections tell you whether or not they believe what they're reading, as opposed to, I mean, they say the words, those are the actual words, but the way they say them, and sometimes it's our fallen nature because we hear it, it goes into our brain and it gets spiced in there. So when we say it, it comes out a little different than the way it went in. And it is literally how you remember it. It's just that somebody else listening may not have remembered it quite the same words, but maybe not the same emotional emphasis. Because certain things that were said hurt you or excited you. And so when you say it, you add a little emphasis to it to put a little spice into it. Okay, so that's why they said it. So we have to be careful. But he that hateth dissembleth with his lips. So someone with hate is going to use this strife, this tale-bearing, in order to dissemble with their lips and lay up deceit within them. Verse 25, when he speaketh fair, believe him not. There are 7 abominations in his heart. Now, speaking fair doesn't mean speaking truth. It just means speaking flattering-like, speaking positively, speaking in a way that we find amicable. He's speaking fair. Okay, it doesn't mean he's speaking balanced. It just means he's speaking fair. In other words, we find it very pleasant what he's saying. But he's lying. There are 7 abominations in his heart. Now, that's an interesting expression. But God looks down and God says there's 7 abominations in his heart. Now, God doesn't list the 7 abominations, what they are. But I don't think that's the important thing. The important thing is God is saying it doesn't matter how pleasant his words are or her words are. Because at the end of the day, there's wickedness and there's abominations in that heart. And what they're trying to accomplish isn't what it sounds like they're trying. One guy once said to me, we were having aggressive negotiations on a particular topic. And he could not deny the historical fact of what these particular people did, okay, or what these particular people stood for. So his only retort was, but they sound so nice. You have to admit it. Like, what does that mean? They sound so nice? They sound nice, but they're killing people? They're the nicest murderers that we've ever met? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, but they're just so nice. Yes, this is what God is saying. Yes, but there's 7 abominations in their heart. Verses 26 through 27. Whose hatred is covered by deceit, his wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation. Whoso diggeth a pit shall fall therein, and he that rolleth a stone, it will return upon him. So, his hatred is covered by deceit. His wickedness, though, is going to be eventually shown out. Do you know what? I think I heard this one time, and it was quite interesting. Is that when you tell the truth, and then someone asks you to repeat it, you don't actually have to remember what you said. Because you told the truth. So if you tell the truth the second time, it's going to match what you told the first time. Right? Because you're just telling the truth. This is how I remember it. And you remember it the same each time. But when you tell a lie, guess what you have to do each time? You have to remember what you said last time. Because you told a lie. So you have to go back, what did I exactly say? Right? So that you can say it again. Oh, good night. I'm not going to say her name, but I came across one time this person. You couldn't get the same story out of her. Ever. She'd tell you one thing, and then you go back later to check up on it, and she'd deny ever having said it the first time. And it don't matter how many people you had standing there as a witness to hear it. Every time she changed it. Every time. You go back, no, I didn't say that. We were all standing here when you said it. No, I never said it. You know why? Because she was lying each time, and she couldn't remember what she said, so she just denied she said it and then said something completely different. But you know what? She got found out. Not that she ever admitted she ever did anything wrong, but everybody realized she was a liar, and you couldn't believe her. So anything she came and told you, you literally, what's the expression, let go in one ear and out the other? Because you knew in 5 minutes, if you went back and asked her and repeated to her verbatim, she would deny having ever said it. I had one fellow one time, we had to install, back at the school, we had to install cameras into the classrooms just to kind of, I know they're adults, but we still had to put cameras in the classroom just to make sure that we could, the classrooms were maintained orderly. And this one instructor had to walk out and go take care of some business, and they were supposed to be working on an assignment. This teacher had to walk out, and this fellow just stood up in the back of the class and just started creating chaos in the class. I'm sitting in my office, and someone reaches over, taps me, because we had the front desk lady monitoring everything, and she came and got me. She goes, "Come on, look at this." I came out of my office and looked, and there he was, just creating chaos in the class. And I thought, get him in here, So we went and got him in there, brought him in. He denied everything. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. I never did that. And I literally went and described every action that he took because I just saw it on the television. And he's like, no, that never happened. So I got the television, I turned it on, replayed it, and I started playing again. There's you. Is that you right there? Is that you? Is that you? Oh, look. You did it. No, I didn't. Now, this is before AI, so there's no way we could do this. You know what I'm saying? It was just a video stream. Look at that, dude. That's you. You just did everything I said you just did. No, I didn't. What do you do with someone like that? He is found out. Do what? Well, we did. We had to. We had to. The other girl had to go too. Compulsive liars. What do you do with them? I mean, I don't even think they could, pardon the country expression, I don't think they could recognize the truth if it walked up and bit them in the butt. But they dissemble. Why do they do that? There's something wrong in here. This is much more serious. God says there's 7 abominations in their heart. There's something. God looking down said, it's so deep. This problem is so deep. I had to go to their pastors, and I had to say, look, these kids can't be in school. And I tell, well, what's wrong with that? Like, are you really? Goes, is that your criteria? That's what they said. Is that your criteria for letting them in school? I'm like, let me help you with something. Yes, that is my criteria. They got to tell the truth. I can't have compulsive liars in a school preparing to go into ministry. Wow, you have to ask that question? Now I'm really concerned. Maybe this is why they don't find anything wrong with telling a lie. Because their pastor doesn't find anything wrong with telling a lie. Isn't that sad? But this is where we're at. Verse 28, a lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted by it, and a flattering mouth worketh ruin. Okay? Again, this is talking about somebody who's getting involved in things that they really have no business. Okay? Liars, deceivers, busybodies. Okay? And God looks down and says, they hate those that are afflicted by it. I mean, think about it. Why would you want to lie to someone you love when you know lying isn't going to help? I know people say, I heard someone say, I'll lie to protect people. You're not protecting them if you're lying. How does then why don't we just say the devil protected us in the Garden of Eden by lying to us? Where in Scripture ever do we find this idea that lying is okay? That dealing out falsehoods means you love somebody. Now, I go back to say this though. There are some things that ain't nobody else's business. I remember one time I was just young, real young, just got into church. And unfortunately, I was a very busy young person. It's easy to do when the adults don't want to get up and do anything. And so at 17 years old, I was hoisting the sails and guiding the ship, and I'm not lying, okay? I could get my whole pastor in here and let him tell you. I mean, I was there. He finally got sick of it one day and had to come to Jesus meeting with the congregation saying that a 17-year-old ought not be the one that's spearheading all these. He wasn't upset with me. He was upset with the adults in his congregation that were letting a 17-year-old who ain't even been saved for a year run all these ministries. And I think some of it I could do because God was calling me. God's hand was on me. There was no question about that. And it was his wisdom that was accomplishing it, not mine, not 17 years old. But at the same time, I was busy. Sunday morning, I was busy. I was coming down a hallway, having just finished something, and was coming down, headed out to my ride. And I passed these couple of folks having a conversation. And unfortunately, I couldn't get around them. And so I heard everything, and it wasn't good. And so when I got out to the car, and I sat down in the car, my ride looked at me and says, "What took you so long?" I'm like, "I'm sorry. I was trying to get out here, but I was going through the hall there, and I got stopped by some people having a conversation, and she says, well, what was it about?" And then she wasn't looking for God. She was just trying to find out what I was doing. I was like, I don't know, something hit me. I said, it might be best if I just forget it. Because I don't think it's something that I really need to even have in my head, let alone tell anybody else. I was 17. And she looked at me and she says, very good. You're going to find God will reveal a lot of secrets to you throughout your life that are nobody else's business. But he revealed them to you. Now you go pray about them. And she taught me a great lesson that day. There's a lot of things that you'll hear that don't need to be anybody else's business. So sometimes you know things and it just ain't nobody else's business. So you're not lying to them by refusing just not to tell them, because it's not their business. You don't need to know. Okay? You're not in a position to do anything about it. So why do you need to know? So I'll just keep it to myself and I'll just pray and let the Lord take care of it. But it's just nobody's business. You don't need to know. And there are a lot of those situations. And some people use that as, well, you're deceiving us because you're not telling us everything. Do you know there are just some things you just don't need to know? You know for a fact from raising a kid that there are just certain times in their lives where they can't handle certain kinds of information. You're not trying to be deceptive. You're not trying to shortchange them in life. They just can't handle this information. And so therefore you don't tell them. But there's a difference between not telling them because they can't handle it and telling them something completely false. Some people say, well, you're lying by omission. I'm not lying by anything. I'm just, you can't handle this information. If I tell you this, okay, it's not going to be to your benefit. Okay? There are things that happen in government level, even though we have an open government and we're of the people and by the people and for the people and blah, 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 blah. But there are some things that if the information got out to the mass public, it would be very anti-beneficial, if that's a word. Not because we're not of the people, for the people, and by the people. It's because maybe that piece of information isn't complete. And if it's out there, people will spice it up. And now we've got a worse situation than we had back over here by just not releasing the information at this particular time. You see it all the time where they won't release the name of victims, or they won't release the name of the perpetrator. And people, they're hiding it from us. Well, maybe they just don't feel like they have all the information they need to confirm what they, what I'm saying? Maybe they haven't told the families to prepare the families before the public knows. And don't you think the families have a right to know before the wide world knows? Sometimes things just can't happen. And sometimes the wide world now with our media stuff, the world knows before the family knows. Because the media grabs it, puts it out there, and people are already on social media picking it up before mom even gets a phone call. Because mom doesn't happen to be on social media and she didn't see it happen. And boy, what a horrible place to find something out that your kid did in social media. The first time you know about it, it's being blasted all over Facebook. And now here comes all the neighbors and friends, and here come the cameras from the news, and everybody's here. And everybody wants to know an opinion, and you don't even know what's going on. But we have that world today because we're filled with a bunch of busybodies. And no tool has been more equipped to spread gossip than social media. Not that social media can be a good tool. It's not that the tool's bad. It's the fact that it's being misused. Nothing wrong with the newspaper. But people misuse that too. Nothing wrong with a prayer meeting. But people misuse that too. Why? Because people are busybodies. So you know what? So here's the great thing. You tend to your business and let others tend to theirs. Now, the expression was, I'm tending to my business and not tending to yours. But in the end of the day, because he walked up and asked his mama, what you doing, mama? And she said, tending to my business and not tending to yours. It was a good lesson he learned. Because some things just aren't your business. And if you happen to come across some information, maybe the best thing to do is just pray. Tell it to the one person who can do something about it, as opposed to sharing it everywhere. And I know we all love the spice. Okay, I'm just looking forward to that roast and all those wonderful things I put all over it and what it's going to taste like when I get home. And I'm sure I'll have a few extra ones sitting on the table just in case I didn't get it right. We all love the spice. Okay? But when it comes to gossip and being a busybody, understand we're not flavoring a roast. We're roasting people's lives. And isn't that sad? Because I think a lot of times we only get pieces of information. Because God knows deep down what's going on. Just like he said, the person that's lying over here, although it sounds really fair, has 7 abominations in their heart. What's he saying? He goes, I know something about him you don't know. Don't let the surface things that you hear convince you you're an expert in what's going on. Because I know deeper levels here. Oh, sure, sometimes people are really good about whipping up controversies. Well, of course. Because with no wood, there's no fire. And people love controversy. So they love pulling out things that they only know half about, that they only heard a rumor about. And then they just get out there and they just keep whipping up the fire and keep throwing wood on it. Finding things, little pieces of information that if you put it all together as a whole wouldn't make sense. But it's a little piece of information that it's another piece of wood they can throw on the fire. You know, it's like kind of with the UFO thing. The truth is out there. Yes, it is. It's called the Bible. And but the truth is out there, right? And so somebody says, well, there are non-terrestrial beings, then they start changing the word from UFO to UA, what is it now? UAE or they got UAP. That's right. So, because really think about it, an unidentified flying object is just something that you saw flying through the air, you just don't know what it is. And the other thing is the same thing. You just can't explain it. Doesn't mean they're from another planet, right? But then here comes the spice. And now no matter what the government says, it's cover up. In fact, the more the government says, the more it's a cover up. Right? And people say they love sound bites. That's the buzzword today, right? You take a sound bite, just a little clip out of someone's total statement, and oh, look what he said. Look what he said. Look what he said. And that's bad enough, but what's worse is people now take that into theology as well, and they start arguing over it's crazy, but it's just all a bunch of gossip. I mean, some guy saw something he couldn't explain. Now all of a sudden, little green men from Mars. But I'll help you with something, okay? Because the truth is out there. Some of those things are just things you just can't understand. They're a hubcap flying through the air. They're a flash of light that caught somebody in the corner of the eye, and they just can't explain what it is. It really is just something very simple. If we could go back in time and we could go look at the thing, that's what we'd find. It's something very simple, right? Maybe it is a secret Air Force craft, that someone saw and didn't recognize, and maybe this is. You know what it also could be? Because I know there are extraterrestrial beings out there. And in spite of some of my colleagues They can operate and do operate mechanical vehicles. Because wasn't it not Elijah said to his servant, prayed, God opened his eyes, and he saw around him angels in chariots and horses? One guy says, there can't be angels, because what do angels need a joystick for? What do they need a pair of reins and horses for? But they got them. They ride in chariots pulled by horses, angels do. And guess what? They're flaming, which means they're putting off some light, aren't they? I don't doubt that some of these things people are seeing are fallen angels in their chariots of fire, because the devil loves stirring up controversy. Because we would rather, because this is amazing. I saw this little docudrama thing about, but it's based on actual research. But they found that most of these people who claim to see UFOs or been abducted are also into the occult. In every case, in every documented case of people who claim to have been abducted and had a close encounter of the third kind, were into the occult. Now I'm spreading some gossip. But it doesn't make more sense? Of course it does. Of course it does. And now they're all waiting for the extraterrestrial beings to return and rule on the earth? Oh, wow. Like we don't know that's coming. I mean, there's not a sci-fi creator out there. Huh? Yep. There's not a sci-fi creator out there that can beat the book of Revelation. What's going to look like. I'm glad I'm going to be with the Lord in heaven. Because the stuff that's going to be going down here will make those movies look like a children's book. The creatures that'll be running on the earth and the thing, wow. It will seem like a children's book. Okay? The things that they make on TV today. But it always amazes me. Why is it? It always leads back to the occult. Because the people that want to take you away from God the most are the devils of hell. If anybody's going to be spreading lies, and if they're spreading them, it's because they hate you. Because they're dissembling. Because they want to wound you. So the only thing we can do then is to get back to the truth. The closer you stay to the truth, the less likely you are to ever be deceived. But here's my warning. When you start becoming a busybody, when you start dealing in things that are not your business, you open up a door for the father of lies to enter your world and really confuse you. Because once you start peddling in lies, okay, then let me tell you who's got a copyright on lies. And when you start using his material or playing his world, don't be shocked if he doesn't show up. Because he can tell a lie a lot better than we can. He's been telling them long enough, hasn't he? I mean, he has 6,000 years of lying he's done. And look at the wonderful accomplishments he's made with 6,000 years. He knows how to lie to a human being. He knows how to get us to believe it. Okay? And the one thing about being a busybody is you're peddling in information you're probably half aware of. Okay? Adding spice to it to embellish it. And what ultimately you're doing is the same thing the devil did back in the Garden of Eden. Taking a piece of truth, wrapping it in layers and layers and layers of lies until the truth is unrecognizable. That's what the devil does. Hey, some of the greatest liars in history have learned that. The best lie has a little bit of truth in it. Because that little bit of truth, even though it's perverted and out of context, lends credibility to the lie that's been told. If we tell a story about Mary wearing a checkered top this morning, and in the story we say Mary wore a checkered top. She came in a checkered top and black slacks and black shirt underneath her checkered top, and then she went out and she shot somebody. And then all of a sudden, they find, right, that she was in that exact outfit as I described it. Well, then I must know what I'm talking about because I described her in detail. So the portion I can't prove is now verified by the piece I can prove. And so you turn around and you did like Hitler, and you've got Jews who are in business and power and leadership, right? And they are, and then you say they did it on the backs of the German people. Well, no one can deny they're wealthy and they're rich and they're influential. I can't prove they did it on the backs of the German people, but I sure am telling the truth that they're doing better off than the Germans are. A little bit of truth, a whole lot of lie. But the little bit of truth validates the lie. And that's what people do. That's how it works. So just stay out of it. You tend to your business, let people tend to theirs. People try to figure out who's saved or not. How about you tend to your salvation? Let everybody else tend to theirs. How about you verify your own salvation? How about you work out your own salvation and trying to work out everybody else's? Now, that's the difference between declaring the truth of salvation and saying you're not saved unless you trust the Lord Jesus Christ. That's not gossip. And asking the question, did you trust the Lord Jesus Christ? And making the statement that if you're trusting anything else than the Lord Jesus Christ, that's not gossip, that's the truth. But I don't know who's trusted Christ and who hasn't. Because my friends and I have never been able to build a repentometer. We have a theoretical concept, but we can't figure out a power source. No. But something we just strap on people, go, oh yeah, they're saved. Look at there. Whoa, it's all the way in the green. And they're getting there. They're in the yellow. And all the way in the red. Nope, this guy's lying. He's out of the seat. But we've never been able to do that because we can't come up with a power source. But the difference between proclaiming the truth that God has commanded us to proclaim and then claiming to see things you can't see. Or spicing things up, making it look more exaggerated than what it is. Because, again, what's going to happen is you're going to get involved in something like holding on to a dog's ears. An angry dog's ears. A dog that, if you can't hold him back, is going to do some serious damage to you. So just stay away from it. Just tend to your business. And if you hear something, pray about it. Don't investigate it. And we don't need to investigate it, do we? We hear something, we just go, Lord, I heard this. I don't know what's going on, Lord, but you'd be surprised how quickly your interest in it will fade because you've told the person who can take care of it. And so that spice is gone. You just made it bland. You made the information bland and tasteless. You know why? Because you handed it off to the person who can take care of it. Now there's no reason. It's something it does. It loses its flavor. Okay? It's like that zebra striped gum. Remember the old zebra striped gum? I don't know what it was called, but it was right. Stuff ran out of flavor in 30 seconds after hitting your mouth, Well, when you take what you hear and you give it to God, the potential gossip and spite, it just loses its flavor. It's of no interest to you anymore. There's something about it that says, I've handed it off to the person who's going to take care of it, I'm done. I don't need to tell it to anybody else. I don't need to embellish it because I already told it to the one person who knows everything about it anyway. I've done what I was supposed to do. I heard something and I passed it on to the one person I know can take care of it. And I'm done. Well, let's go ahead and close this morning. And we're going to sing our hymn, our chorus, page 71. I know we all know it, but it is page 71 in our books. And